Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Institute for Personal Development, where total consciousness is the new frontier. Kriya Yoga is the union of the individual with the divine. Join us as we explore the practices that initiate this process.
Well, good morning and welcome to the Voice of Yoga. Let's Talk Consciousness. I am your hostess, Lisa Winton, and with me is Kenny Toy, also known as Swami Jayananda, founder of Institute for Personal Development, located here in Hampton, New Hampshire. Good morning, Swami. Thank you for being here today. How are you?
I'm doing well. And you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much. Well, I want to thank the listeners for tuning in today. And on the Voice of Yoga today, we will be talking about karma and Kriya Yoga with the divine. Well, let's begin our topic of karma today. Swami, I think we should first begin by explaining to our listeners what exactly is karma.
Karma is what they call the law of reciprocity. For every action, there is an equal and an opposite reaction that we're chained to. And what we're putting out, basically, is what we're getting back. And it's a big part of understanding ourselves as human beings. Without the cycle of death and rebirth and the law of reciprocity, I found that a lot of things were very nebulous and confusing. But with this cycle of death and rebirth and this law of reciprocity of karma, then I thought a lot of things made a lot more sense. Because I was raised a Christian, and from the Christian perspective that I was exposed to, life was a one-shot deal. And the concept of this all-knowing, all-loving, supreme being knows what you're going to do, before you do it, and creates you to do it, and then punishes you eternally for doing it, just seemed very ungodly. The other concept is you have this all-knowing, all-loving supreme being, creates one person blind, crippled, or crazy, and another person, perfect physical specimen. Life just didn't seem to have a lot of logic. But with the cycle of death and rebirth and this law of reciprocity, I thought, we don't come in as clean white sheets. That we actually come in with what they call karmic merit, karmic debt. So everything is a direct result of action. And then what I really liked about Kriya Yoga was the way that it explains karma on different levels. Because one of the things we're constantly saying is how we think is what we become. That there really aren't any accidents, that everything is a direct result of our creation. So, but where the collisions start to happen is between what is conscious, what is unconscious, and what is karmic. And in Kriya Yoga, we break karma down into three types of karma, which correspond with the forces of the universe. Because your first type of karma, which is astrologically what we call fourth house karma, is prarabdha karma. It's every action that we have encountered or created from the time they cut the cord in this lifetime. Everything that we have done, we are directly connected to. Now, your second type of karma was what they called samchita karma, which was eighth house karma. And that was what we called collective karma. It's the karma of the era that we are born into, these times, which is also part of how we chose this incarnation. And it also includes what they call past life karma, things that have accumulated as a result of previous incarnations. And then the last type of karma, which is 12th house karma, which is what they call Kriya Karma, or the process of akarma, or undoing. So there it kind of ties us into these different forces that we talked a little bit about, the gunas, the creating, the sustaining, and the dissolving forces of the universe. Because karma is happening on all of these different levels. And a big part of the yoga process is to be able to transcend this cycle of death and rebirth.
Well, that's really fascinating. We have actually quite a few questions that were sent to us via email that I was wondering if maybe we could have you answer a few of those for us today.
Yeah, sure, that'd be fine.
All right, I guess I'll just start with the first question that we have. The question is, what is the difference between fate and destiny, and is either one of those or both of those connected to karma?
Well, I think fate and destiny, and also the concept of karma, to answer the question, they are all connected. For the law of karma is for every action there is an equal and an opposite reaction that we are directly chained to. And the whole concept of fate and the concept of destiny, I think they're similar ways of saying the same thing. Maybe fate might be that you are really totally the victim. Destiny may imply that you have a certain amount of choice involved in it. And then, of course, I think the variable that wasn't mentioned in the question is the whole concept of what we call in Kriya Yoga free will. The whole concept of where we transcend this cycle, this pattern of life and death. And the whole intention of the practice of yoga is really to help us separate from this cycle of death and rebirth and connect to this part of ourselves that is eternal, this unified state of existence.
Well, I guess that leads me to one of the questions that we have, and that is, if we're on the cycle of death and rebirth, how do we get off that karmic wheel? What's the process that a person has to do?
Well, that's what we've been talking about with Kriya Yoga. You literally have to rebirth your body in this other energy field, in this other source of sustenance. It's that, like we've been saying, what we desire is going to determine our fate. And if we desire particles, we are fated to be of a lower, like animal nature. If we desire waves, we are of a human nature. But if we desire the void or the nothing, then we become of a divine nature. And it is that source of sustenance that gives us the leverage. It's our attachment to this life force that enables us to lift ourselves literally out of this cycle of death and rebirth.
Well, thank you for answering that question. I have another one for you. We talk about that we have a sense of purpose, and is our sense of purpose also connected to karma?
Well, to answer your question, yes. That everything is relative. Everything is related. For everything in this universe is cause and effect. Now, the concept of purpose starts to reveal itself as an individual's identity begins to transcend the limited perspective of just seeing yourself as a separate entity. It's your connection to this greater whole that gives you this genuine sense of purpose. And then from that expanded sense of awareness comes the understanding that what I'm putting out is what I'm getting back. What surrounds me is within me. See, that realization is of the utmost importance, that what surrounds us is within us. Because in the previous shows, we kind of talked a little bit about the whole concept of mind on yoga. The whole thing of, in the yoga framework, mind isn't limited to brain. But also, the concept of mind, the way that it works is that it's the body is in the mind, and the mind is in the spirit. That what surrounds us is within us, that this, what we are looking out at, is actually our own thought forms. And so a big part of, understanding karma and understanding reciprocity is recognizing that I am creating my reality.
So if a person is having, and I'll use the phrase, a bad day, for example, nothing seems to go right for a person, so you're saying is that those things that happen to us in the physical world first manifest itself in the mind?
Well, to answer your question, yes. Form follows function. How we think is what we become. Then again, like we've been saying, you've got the conscious part of your mind. Then, depending on how broad your field of awareness is, there's also going to be unconscious and then karmic aspects. And the way that it basically works is that our inner subjective state creates this biomagnetic force field that causes the outside world to respond to us. That in understanding life, you have to understand that everything in this universe is on this kind of pulse, that it's going from subject to object, object to subject. Even the whole concept of vision isn't just the inward movement of light, but it is also the outward projection of the image. And the more that we get in touch and understand that, how we think is what we become, that these thoughts, are energy that has capability. Because the electron is both a particle and a wave. But it is a particle when it is being observed. Observation has effect on our reality. So a lot of times, when we feel like everything is happening to us, most of that is just an unconscious projection. And the way that you can actually start to get a better grasp on that is by expanding your conscious mind and recognizing that, I'm not only thinking on a conscious level, but I'm also thinking on an unconscious and a karmic level. That's why a lot of the tools that we use in Kriya Yoga are really designed to expand the conscious mind. And then also understand, just the language of mind. The whole world of imagery is an important language to understand, because the universe does not understand the negative. So with regard to your imagery, you really always have to create images that are in the positive format. Does that help you?
Yeah, yes, it does. Thank you. Okay, I have another question. So how do we know if the actions that we do or the actions that we don't do or what we say or don't say, how do we know if we are repaying a karmic debt or placing more karma onto our beings?
Well, to answer your question, I mean, the whole concept of karma in and of itself is not something that we're trying to get rid of. You know, these like we had said, you know, I mean, things are happening on different levels. You've got a physical reality, you've got a mental reality, and you have a spiritual reality. And on the relationship between matter and mind, this cycle of death and rebirth, all you really want to do is you want to understand how everything is working so that you don't feel faded. Now, a major thing of when we do feel faded is that events, circumstances, situations, things that are more emotionally charged and typically emotionally charged negatively are usually the things that are unconscious. And those are the things where we kind of feel like victims. Once you are able to understand that, you know, what I'm putting out is what I'm getting back, and you are regulating what it is that you're putting out with intention, you know, again, coming back to the concept of purpose, you know, there's this kind of yielding of personal desire for the betterment of a greater whole. You know, when your actions are in harmony with your purpose, then your actions are what the way I would describe it is they are burning clean. There isn't a lot of residual left over, I'm going to say, unresolved stuff that would be associated with it. But again, a lot of that comes with the clarity that comes with the internal connection that enables you to actually recognize that what surrounds me is within me, and making most of my adjustments internally as opposed to trying to manipulate my outside world. I don't have to fix the outside world. I just have to change how I think and how I feel about it.
Okay, great. Well, I'm going to have you hold that thought right there, and let's pause for a moment to hear a word from our sponsor.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate.
If you are looking for a Samadhi-based experience, IPD Kriya Yoga has the goods. A complete yoga program that includes the practices and the process. Starting with the separation from mother, including the labors and tasks of the hero and the return as a whole person. Practice makes perfect only when practice is whole. Kriya Yoga is a path of action, knowledge, and devotion. Samadhi, or total consciousness, is experienced by knowing and doing with devotion. Call or click now and get started. 603-929-0303 or www.ipdtransform.com. Namaste.
Well, welcome back. For those of you just joining us, you are listening to The Voice of Yoga, and we are talking consciousness. We are talking about karma and Kriya Yoga with the divine. And Swami, I want to call back something you had talked about earlier. You're talking about the different types of karma and how they relate to the different houses. And on earlier discussions, we actually had talked about birth charts. Is there a way that a person can look at their birth charts, and can that assist them in understanding where they might be in this lifetime in regards to karma?
Well, to answer your question, what we had said was the birth chart is a map of what we call your karmic pattern. It's kind of like the hand that you're dealt for this particular lifetime. And then what we choose to do with that hand, because a big part of human development is this process of growing psychologically and spiritually, this whole process of becoming a human in the adult state. And part of that is the whole thing of going from unconscious awareness to self-conscious awareness to superconscious awareness. And your birth chart can be a wonderful tool that you can use in order to help you map that process out. Your birth chart, there will be things about these cycles that will be very generic, which means, that will be very generational. Because I think we might have mentioned that approximately every 7 years we go through what's called a point of passage. Astrologically, that your progressed moon and transiting Saturn go to what's called hard aspect to their natal positions. But then there are also things that will be very individual about these points of passage. And again, the birth chart can give you clues into things that would assist you in being able to understand who you are and what is your purpose for this particular incarnation.
Great. I have one more question, and we had talked previously in our Series 2 class. We talked one night specifically about judgment. How can we relate what we see out there in the world? How do we know it's a judgment, or if we should just recognize it as maybe something karmically that's going on?
Well, I think the major thing is that how we internalize the situation is of the utmost importance. Again, is there a difference between being judgmental and being spiritual? Because oftentimes the way that we try and go about it is we don't make judgments. When in fact, we're making judgments all the time. The simple fact that you don't just step out into the street and, leave it to fate, if there's a car coming. One of the judgments I always make is, I look both ways. I make sure the coast is clear before I step out into the street. And so being spiritual doesn't mean that you're not judgmental in that respect. When you're spiritual, you don't condemn people. You recognize that everybody's doing the best they can with what they know, which means that you don't have to condone bad behavior. But at the same time, you have a sense of compassion because you recognize that there isn't anything that you read in the newspaper that each and every one of us, under the right circumstance, isn't capable of doing the exact same thing. What that does is it makes you compassionate, but at the same time recognizing that there is a difference between what we would call good behavior and bad behavior, good choice and bad choice. And karmically, there is going to be retribution as a result of these choices that we either make or we don't make. But the bottom line is that for every action, there is an equal and an opposite reaction that we are chained to. So the concept of justice, is built into our reality. Nobody gets away with anything. Whether it be in this lifetime or in a future lifetime or, whenever it is. Karmically, that's a big part of our yoga practice, because what is karma? These are thought patterns. And if you understand that, I can change thoughts, I can dissolve karmic seeds that haven't sprouted. And again, that's a big part of, how we employ our yoga practice. Because it's kind of like gardening. That whatever seeds that it is that you plant that you want to nurture, you've got to continue to nurture. But at the same time, you're going to look and you're going to see that there are things growing that you didn't plant, that you're going to have to patrol and you're going to have to get rid of in order to maintain this healthy crop. And that's why we develop what's called a spiritual practice.
How does one go about getting rid of the weeds in their garden?
Well, the first order of business is you have to be able to recognize them. You have to find them. And again, what surrounds us is within us. You know what I mean? So if your body is a diagram of your mind, then if you have symptoms in your body, pain, discomfort, instability, in your physical body, there are thought patterns that are creating it. A big part of that, like we have said in earlier sessions, is you have to recognize that. But then once you find the thought pattern, then you have to turn your mind to your creativity, your imagination, and replace them. That's what we talked about. You can't just release a bad thought, because what you're putting out is what you're getting back. It doesn't go away. It comes back at you. But if you change it and you emit a different thought, then, of course, you have proactively effected a change that will create a desired outcome.
Excellent. Well, in closing, I would like to invite the listeners out there, please visit our website, follow us on Pinterest, Twitter, Facebook, and, keep those comments and questions and curiosities coming. We enjoy hearing from you. Our program next week, we will be exploring the solar eclipse on September 29th and its karmic implications. Okay, well, any final thoughts or comments on karma and Kriya Yoga with the divine, Swami?
Well, I think, like we have been talking a little bit about is the whole thing of utilizing the energy that's available to us at any given moment. How to use our thoughts, how to expand our minds so that we can actually create a better environment, how we can actually create a better world for us to live in. But a big part of that is educating yourself. You have to learn just that we're complex beings and the interplay between the physical, the mental, and the spiritual components, these different force fields and energy systems are how we're creating our reality. Because a big part of your yoga practice is you want to keep yourself in a position of strength. You always want to be in a position of power. And it is this internal connection, this benefit of internal support, that enables us to do that. So even, as we start to delve into utilizing a lot of these different modalities and techniques that we employ, the bottom line is that you want to have a strong sense of self, and at the same time, you want to have a connection to this greater whole. And so those are the things that we will continue to, I want to say, reinforce in these discussions.
Excellent. Well, in closing, I do want to invite our listeners to join us for our Series 2 classes on Thursday night at 7 p.m. You can join us on Powwow and find us there. If you visit our website, ipdtransform.com, you can also get information on how to get on Powwow that way as well. So I invite you all to do that. Well, thank you, listeners, for joining our program, Voice of Yoga. This is Lisa Winton with Swami Jayananda signing off. Have a wonderful Kriya Yoga kind of day. Namaste.
Namaste.